Hi guys, it's Nicole. Welcome back to another video, or hello if you are new. Today I have another recommendation video for you, and I wanted to recommend books based, well, not based off Squid Game, but books to read if you enjoyed Squid Game. So I just want to get this first book out of the way because I feel like if I don't mention it, someone will comment and be like, oh my god, how can you not mention it? But yeah, obviously Hunger Games. I did love the Hunger Games as a teenager. I actually haven't read it for a really long time, but I love the movie. I'm constantly rewatching the movie. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, just wanted to throw it out here. I don't really have much to say about it. I feel like most people know it. I just wanted to pop it in here in case someone thought I was forgetting it, because I am not. Okay, so the first actual book I want to recommend is Battle Royale. Now this is very similar in terms of we have a death survival game setting in this book. We follow a bunch of school students who think they're going on a field trip, and they are on their bus, and while they're on their bus they are all put into sleep through some sort of gas. I can't remember how exactly, but it gets like let out in the bus, and then they all fall asleep, and when they wake up from being unconscious, they are in a classroom on an island, and they are told they're part of this survival game. All the students have to kill each of their classmates until there's only one remaining. They also have these collars around their necks, so if they refuse to participate in the killing, or there's sort of zones where they can't go into on the island, and so if they enter in a zone, or if they're refusing to take part or follow the rules, this collar that they have around their neck will like blow off their heads. So that's the whole thing. This book was published quite some time ago, so there is some language issues, like there's a lot of homophobia I can remember. I think there was fat phobia, and there's definitely quite a bit of misogyny, so just heads up for that. But overall it's like a really fun, chaotic time, and it's kind of crazy because I think there was originally like 40 something characters in this book, and you see how quickly like they drop off, but it's amazing like how many characters you could like actually keep track of. I think the story was told in a way that made that quite accessible. Like it sounds overwhelming to like know that many characters. I think the author did a really great job with that, and it is like crazy. It is batshit crazy, this one. And I think if you're really looking for a death survival game story, this is the one I would recommend first. Unfortunately, the rest of the books I have on this list don't really have death survival game settings. That is something I really need to find more of. Death survival game settings I feel like aren't that common. So all these other books I'm going to suggest, while there might not be a death survival game sort of setting, there's some sort of element, either a survival element, might be like the tone of the story or the characters, or might be like a psychological thriller. There's something about it that I think you will enjoy if you also enjoyed Squid Game. First up, I wanted to suggest two books by the same author, but they're two different series. So the first one is Scythe, and the second one is Unwind by Neal. So these are both book one in separate series of his. I have only read these series. I know he has like a few other series out there in books that I think actually might even be good suggestions, but I just didn't want to include any books in this video that I had not read. I loved these. Granted, I did read this one quite a few years ago, so my memory on it is a bit hazy, and I read this in recent years, and again I really enjoyed it. This one here, Scythe, is set in the future where humans have basically conquered death, meaning there's no illnesses, there's no war, there's nothing that can like kill you. So in order to maintain the population, the society has constructed these scythes, and scythes are these people who are trained, and they end up going around and killing people. So they kill people in order to maintain the population, and we follow two characters in here who end up becoming apprentice scythes. We just kind of go on this crazy journey with them of having this like power to kill people in a society where no one dies unless they're killed by scythes. So they really have all the power. I think power is like a huge theme in Squid Game, and again in here it's a huge theme, and also the cost of death, which we also see again in here. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoy Neal Shusterman's concepts. I think he's great at coming up with really unique concepts. So yeah, highly recommend this one. And this one is similar but different. In this one, we follow a bunch of kids who are on the run because in this world, people can get, I think it's called Unwound from my memory. Yeah, Unwound. So the children here are on the run because they are being put up, donated, I don't know how to phrase it. But people in here can be unwound, which essentially means that they are donated. Their entire body is donated, and their arms, their eyes, every single part of them is given to someone else who needs it. So sort of just like organ donation, but in this world the concept is it's with every part of your body. And there's different situations in here. We follow a kid in here who is a bit of a troublemaker, and I can't remember if it's his parents or if he's with a foster family. He could possibly be with a foster family, but they have decided to give him up. So he's on the run from the people who are trying to collect him to get him unwound. Then we also follow another boy who was raised to become unwound always. So we see all these different kids from different situations trying to get away from being unwound. It's creepy. So again, we have that sort of survival element to the story, and there's a really also just dark theme that's quite horror-esque as well. And I really enjoyed this. I never completed the series, and it is something I definitely need to go back and do. And yeah, I loved it. I don't know why I ever did, but it was a very, very interesting concept, and that's what I really love Neal Shusterman for. And I need to read more of his books as well, because I know he has a few others out there that also sound very interesting. The next book I'm going to recommend is The Escape Room. Now this is a book I literally just finished the other day, and when I finished it I was like, oh my god, this is so perfect to fit on this list. And I was so happy that I read it and found it in time to put on this list. I really loved this. It basically has two timelines, or two POVs. One POV we're following Sarah, who is this young woman who's really struggling to make meets end. She works like multiple like restaurant jobs. She's getting really poor pay. She lives in a shitty apartment, and she's struggling to support her family. She's trying to find employment in finance because that was what she studied. So when we first meet her, she's really struggling to find this job. She eventually finds this job with this huge like corporate company, and she moves to New York, and like she lives this like really luxurious lifestyle. So we sort of see her go on this journey. And then the other part of the story, like the second POV, is we have 4 people who are stuck in this elevator, and at first they go into this elevator thinking that it's going to be an escape room game quiz. Basically they're given like puzzles or riddles, and they have to solve them to get out. It's like a thing that they thought they were getting into, but it's a lot more sinister, and they're sort of stuck. Eventually there is a connection between these two stories, but I loved it because you had this like really claustrophobic sort of POV where these people are stuck in an elevator, and then you have this other POV of this girl like struggling and trying to find herself financially, which I know might sound like very distant to Squid Game, but the more the story you read, the more you get how it's related to Squid Game. Pretty much all the characters in this book are really shitty people who have done a lot of really shitty things for money, because they all work for finance. They're all like bankers on Wall Street, and they are crappy people. Just that sort of greed and how people do like basically anything for money really relates to Squid Game. And there is definitely like a thriller, psychological suspense element to it as well. And I think it's a really good read and a really good rec if you enjoyed Squid Game. So the next book I want to recommend is Vicious. The reason I want to recommend this book for if you enjoyed Squid Game is because I think the characters have similarities. They're quite morally grey. They both have like a lot of greed that drives them, and they want more power. In this one, not necessarily money. In this book we follow 2 characters, Victor and Eli, and they are roommates in college and also basically like best friends. These 2 are also both absolute geniuses, and they start to experiment and eventually figure out how to turn themselves into superheroes. We flash forward into present day. I can't remember exactly the time period. I think it's like 5 or 10 years, something like that, between the 2 timelines. And in the present day we figure out they're not best friends, and something went terribly wrong, but they did succeed in giving each other superpowers. So we have these sort of villains like super villains, I guess, trying to fight for power. It's great because like they're both really evil, but like obviously like one's more evil than the other. This is a really gripping story, and I really loved how the two timelines in this was done. I think it did such a good job at keeping you so engaged the whole time, because you wanted to figure out what happened with these two friends, but you also wanted to figure out where things went wrong, because in the present timeline Victor's in prison, so like how did he get to prison, and you want to figure out like the superpowers and sort of the mystery behind them. Just so much. It's so good. I highly recommend this. Even if you didn't enjoy Squid Game, I recommend this book. It is a one. The next book I'm going to recommend is Sadie. I really enjoyed the audiobook of this, and I suggest that's how you consume the story. I think the audiobook is absolutely fantastic. The audiobook has a full cast, it has sound effects. Part of this story is told through podcast, so it really does sound like a podcast when you listen to the audiobook. And we follow this girl called Sadie, whose story is actually being retold through the podcast. Sadie has gone missing. She was originally trying to track down her sister and figure out what was happening with her sister, and while she was chasing her sister, she unfortunately has also gone missing. So we're following this podcast who is trying to figure out what the hell happened, and it's full of like interviews of people who knew Sadie, of people who just like kind of came across Sadie while she was on her adventures. So you're piecing together this puzzle of what happened to this missing girl who is following and chasing another missing girl. This book is like so suspenseful and so scary and so well told. It's great. I highly recommend it. Okay, I also wanted to recommend some manga, and the first one I want to recommend is Attack on Titan. This book, the main reason I'm recommending this for if you enjoyed Squid Game is because of the survival element. We follow these people who live in this walled off city, so there's multiple walls. I'll see if there's like a map. I'll put something on the screen actually, just so you can get a visual, because I know even if I explain this more accurately than I'm going to, it still probably won't make sense. But basically there are these walls that section off the people of this world to the outside world, and in the outside world there are titans, which are basically huge giants that eat people. We follow these young kids who live in the outer sections of the human population, so in the outer walled cities, and when they are children, unfortunately their city gets attacked and they lose their family, they lose their homes, and they end up enlisting in the military when they get a little bit older, when they're teenagers, in order to fight back with these titans. This is just such a good series because you go into it really not knowing where the hell the story is going to take you, and I freaking love the anime. I haven't finished it, so don't spoil me, and I didn't finish the manga, but I highly suggest the manga and the anime. I think it's such a well-crafted story. It's a story that does start off like seeming quite simplistic, just about survival and these humans battling these like huge beasts that they're trying to protect themselves against by hiding behind these walls, but there's so much more to them. There's so many more secrets. It's great. It's really good. I also wanted to recommend, which I feel like is a very obvious suggestion to be honest, but Death Note. I love Death Note. I first watched the anime when I was like 14-15, and I have become obsessed ever since. It's been a long time since I've consumed the story, and I'm actually getting really tempted now to like go back and reread the book, the manga. This book follows a boy called Light, who is a high schooler, and one day he comes across this notebook that is labeled the Death Note. Inside he finds instructions that says if he writes a person's name in the book, that person will die. He laughs it off at first, thinks it's, you know, some sort of joke that someone's written down, but he is watching television at the time, and on the television there is a news coverage of a hostage situation, and they show the criminal who is holding the victims hostage, and Light just writes his name down, and not too long after, that hostage dies. It gets so much more intense. Like, I think what I loved about this book so much was all the strategy behind it. So there's all these sort of rules, and the way Light figures out more rules and how he bends rules is just so clever. And also what this power does to him and how it corrupts him. He starts off as this like teenager who's just really smart, and he has these intentions of trying to rid the world of like criminals, and it goes to his head. And this is one of the best like villain origin stories, if not the best villain origin story I've ever read. I loved it, and if you haven't read Death Note, or if you haven't watched some anime, I highly recommend it. Like, there's a reason this is like amazing and everyone loves it. The next book I want to recommend is The Grace Year. This book came out, I think, at the very beginning of 2020, and I remember a lot of people talking about it when it first came out, but then afterwards the hype or the talk about it really did die down. But I really did enjoy this. Basically, we follow these girls in a quite backward society where they believe that when they become of age at like 16 that they're very alluring to men. So in order to sort of prevent any sort of corruption from going on, they send these girls off into the wild to survive. It is very Lord of the Flies, this sort of situation with the girls, and there is fight for survival, fight for power, and I really enjoyed it. And I think if you're looking for another survival story that's quite dystopian, that has a lot of themes of like feminism and their sort of relationships and how they fight for power, this one is a really good one. And that is it for my recommendations today. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, and if you agree with me, let me know if you have any more recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you're enjoying whatever you're currently reading, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!